Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to the Planet1wp, and we are on time. So today was a challenging day. I tried to be a superheroine today, try to mix a record, do some private lessons, and do a podcast. So maybe 2.5 of those things were done. And what will happen in this podcast is up to you and I. And I guess they say what happens in something stays in something. Whatever happens in this planet will stay in this planet. But again, welcome. My name is Josie Carr. Today we will be talking about MIDI. What the hell does MIDI do? How do we make it work in Ableton? And just with external gears. It will be super chill. Let's get to it. So I'm going to first and foremost work on getting rid of that word We should have something where every time I say we do some wow stuff or something. I don't know, but I have to get rid of that word. Cool. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys. Actually, let me share Ableton, and I'll also share my camera, which I have my iPhone camera up top here, and I have it on my let me show you guys what I have going on. I wonder if you guys, I think I'm pretty loud in the microphone, so if not, just let me know and I'll peek over here. Like I said, it's new, so I'm getting used to multitasking until I can get someone that'll work with me in running, I guess, the video side of things. Cool. So I have this camera right here, and as you guys can see, I have the camera on this Micro Brute analog keyboard. My push here, my machine in MIDI mode, because we want to talk about MIDI today. So I put it in MIDI mode so we can use the pads to play any synth we want in Ableton. I have one of these vocal keys, which are pretty cool. I actually like it. It has pretty cool sounds in it. And you can load any sounds you want, actually, with a program that they have for it. Maybe at some point I'll do a video about that. I have my Novation controller. We're not going to use that today. And all the way on that side, you guys probably can't see it, but I have a vocal bass also keyboard as well, a small one that I sometimes use for production, and I've used it in the past for live performances. And on this side, you guys won't be able to see it too much unless I pick it up. But I have a Novation drum machine that has 2 synthesizers in it, and the drum machine as well, where you can play 2 parts with it. I mean, actually 4 different parts with it. But there's like different stuff you can do with it to play a lot of interesting stuff. So that's what we'll work on today. So the first thing that I have to do is actually open up Ableton, which you guys can see I have it open up here. And let me get, there we go with the let me get the fuck up out of here. Cool, let me get the pointer here. This is usually helpful, I find. You guys can see it better. So let's do that. Put it on there, and there we go. You guys can follow better. Cool. So I have Ableton open. Like any software that you use, you first have to tell the software that you're going to connect some controllers to it, or any MIDI device to it. Otherwise, Ableton won't know that it has them connected to it. So we'll go into the live preferences here. The shortcut is Command, as you guys can see there. Okay. We'll go into the preferences, and the preferences will open up for us. And here in the preferences, under the MIDI ports, is where we let Ableton know what it's going to receive, and then Ableton will let us know what it's going to send out and to who. So for example, I have my Micro Brute here, and you guys can see that I have input here saying Ableton will receive input from this Micro Brute. So I have to turn on the track, because the track is what lets it know that it will be receiving notes. If I wanted to use these knobs to MIDI map them, I could turn on remote. But for this example, we're not going to do that. We just want to play the notes. So we're going to turn on track So Ableton knows that it's going to receive input from this keyboard. I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to look at the Ableton push as well. The Ableton push, of course, is made by Ableton. It's going to work when you plug it in if you set it up on top here. But if you want to use it in MIDI mode, you know, change it from just the regular mode and change it to user mode by hitting this button up here. You also have to let it know that it's going to be sending information. You're just going to be receiving notes, and you can use the remotes to map them as well. Okay, I'll have this on. We're not going to use it in MIDI mode, I'll be honest. We will be using the machine in MIDI mode though. Okay, and then I also have the circuit drum machine right here, as you guys can see on the side. And I have it on as well. I should have showed you that at the beginning here. I'm not going to send notes from it, so I didn't turn on the notes on the circuit. Just the keyboard. I want to play notes from it into Ableton. Okay. And the other thing that I have on that you guys can see as well here is the input from the machine virtual input. It's saying, hey Ableton, I'm going to be sending notes to you via the virtual input, and you guys can see that it's on. And I also have the remote because I might want to map some of these buttons. We're not going to do it today, but just in case you guys were wondering how that was done. Okay, so once we've let Ableton know that we're going to be sending information, MIDI information from this controller, that controller, whichever you choose, then we want to also, since these are synthesizers and they make sounds, we want Ableton to send the information back to them. So we tell Ableton output to the micro brute, which is right here, and you guys will see it. As soon as I find it, I can show you guys. Output to the micro brute right here. So Ableton is going to say, hey, I have some MIDI notes. What instrument do you want to play them through? And I'm saying, hey, turn on output to the micro brute because I want to use that as well. And also send some information to the circuit, right? I'm going to turn on the sync information on the circuit so they can sync up. When I hit play, it will start my circuit. Okay. After you're done with that, it's pretty good. Ableton knows that it's going to be receiving information from the micro brute. It knows it's going to be receiving information from the machine in MIDI mode in the push. How do we know that? Well, when we look at a MIDI track, the first thing we want to do is create a MIDI track. And as you guys can see, I have one already here. You can go to create and insert a MIDI track, and it will create a MIDI track like this. I have it highlighted, and if you guys can see here, it's saying this track is going to receive MIDI information from all ins. What are all ins? Everything we set up in the preferences. You can be particular and you can say, I just want input information from the micro brute, you know. So it would only receive information if I record engage this track. You guys can see that it's receiving information. And if I hit this one here, it won't, because I said just from the micro brute. Okay. But I'm going to put all ins, you know, and you guys can see that it will receive. And so if I feel like playing on this one, or if I feel like playing this one, I can do that. You know, using particular ones, like if you want to micro boot, you can do it like when you're performing live, maybe one track, you just want to use this synthesizer to play the sound on that track, and maybe this one. So you could be more intricate and advanced later on. But for now, all ins is fine. Okay. Now, MIDI works by MIDI channels. Okay. One MIDI track can have up to 16 MIDI channels. So what does that mean? This one could be on its own MIDI channel. This one could be on its own MIDI channel over there, the vocal. The vocal bass could be on another MIDI channel. And the circuit could be on 4 because it has 4 parts. You know, so you could have one synthesizer on the circuit on MIDI channel 5, the other one on 6, 7, and 8. On this keyboard, I decided to use MIDI channel 15. Okay. So remember, it's receiving MIDI from all information, and now we want Ableton to send information back to this keyboard so we can play some notes. Here at the bottom it says, who should I send the MIDI to? I say, well, send it to the micro brute. It's saying, cool, but what MIDI channel are you on? Well, I programmed this guy to be on MIDI channel 15, so I'll turn it to MIDI channel 15. You see, you have 16 MIDI channels. Okay, so I'm all set. So if I were to play anything on this track and record it, I'll be able to hear it. Okay, so I'll do something. Instead of recording it, we're just going to add some notes here, and I already added some to make the tutorial a little faster. I added some C1 notes here. And now we need to hear this keyboard. I'm going to turn the volume up on it so we can hear it. If you guys can see, if I hit that note as well on the actual keyboard up here, I can hear that keyboard. So essentially it's confirming that it's receiving MIDI from all, which includes the micro brute, as you guys can see, and it's sending information or MIDI back to this guy. How do we hear what's coming back? Well, if we play this, these notes that are here will show up, will be heard, I mean. Okay, let me turn off the click, the metronome here for a minute. And now we can play around. Okay, so that's all you have to do. You have to go to preferences, and in preferences tell again quick recap. In the MIDI ports, you let Ableton know what device is going to receive information from. In this case, it was the micro brute. I turned it on so it can receive these notes. Okay, once it received that and I recorded something, Ableton needs to send it back to this instrument to be heard, and I send the output back to the micro brute that you guys can see here. Okay, and I'm gonna do the same thing with the circuit. Okay, so the circuit is a drum machine. I just want to lock it up in time, so when I hit play here it will start playing the circuit. In that case we use what's known as MIDI time code, but in this case it's going to just be MIDI code. So it's going to send MIDI information to sync up the circuit, and it can start in time. Okay, so we also set that up. Remember, in the preferences, we went to circuit right here. We said Ableton is going to send output to the circuit, but this time it's going to send syncing information, which means it will sync up this circuit with Ableton at whatever tempo is playing. Okay, so now let me see if I can get this closer so we can actually see this. Let's see if that'll work for us. You guys can see that the play button will start, and let me turn up the volume on here and make sure that we actually have some sound. Let me go to a pad here and see if I can turn it up. Let's see where I have it connected. Whoops, that's a little too loud. Last time I did a podcast, I blew myself out and I was super like overloaded. So cool. So now if I stop it, let's stop it here. If I play start, Ableton will start it because it's syncing information to it. And now they're both playing together. That's pretty much the basic of MIDI with Ableton. In preferences, you set it up the same way I just did. If you want to play MIDI notes, you have to let Ableton know which device you're using for input in the track and which one you're using to send information back to it. If you want to lock up an external drum machine or anything like that, just make sure that you're sending sync information to it. Okay, and I'll lower this sound here for a minute, and then you can play around now. It's all you want. That'll be my drums here. Then we can start turning up sounds here. So now this is like a hybrid setup. We have the computer and we have analog synthesizers as well. Okay. Let's lower this one a little bit. So now we can do more MIDI stuff if we wanted to. For example, we know we're playing this synthesizer sound here, and I have circuit playing. Okay. Now we can also use these other synthesizers that are here with MIDI, because now we're going to get a little bit more advanced to say, well, how can we use these other synthesizers? Well, from circuit, we can send MIDI out of it to start that synthesizer, to start that synthesizer. Okay. And I have a cable here that is a MIDI output, and it's coming out of the output of my circuit. Okay, it's a MIDI cable that's going out, and it's going to the input of that synthesizer right there. So when I hit play here, it will also start that one. And if you guys take a look at the play button on that one, it will light up. So that one is also playing. If I turn up the volume on that one, you guys will hear it. And the bass one is also playing as well. And now you can play around and start launching other tracks that have stuff on it. Cool, so I'll do a quick review of that one because I want to show you guys how you can use MIDI effects as well to play chords if you don't know how to play chords on a piano. So let's do a quick review of what I just did here. The first thing I did was, before I even created any MIDI track or anything else, I wanted to let Ableton know that I was going to be using these devices to play MIDI into it. So I went into preferences by going to preferences on there, and then in the MIDI ports down here, the name of this particular keyboard is microbrute. Okay, and I have to let Ableton know again that it's going to receive information from the microbrute. So I went into the input here and I looked for the microbrute. Okay, and I found it right here, and I turned on track. Track means that you can play the MIDI notes and it would receive MIDI notes from this keyboard. Remote here means that if I wanted to use those knobs to map them for MIDI, I can also do that, but I don't want to use the knobs for that. I just want to play keys. So I let Ableton know that I would be sending input from here. And then, since this is an external synthesizer, it has its own sounds. It doesn't need to be in a computer. It's not a plugin. It's an actual keyboard with sounds in it. You make up your sounds. Ableton has to be able to send MIDI notes that we play and the clips back to it so we can use the sounds from this keyboard. In that case, we just go into the output, microbrute here, and we turn on output. So Ableton knows that it's going to output information back to the microbrute here. I also use a drum here, a drum machine, the circuit. Okay, in this case, I just wanted to sync them up. So when I hit play in Ableton, it will start up the circuit. Okay, so in the circuit, all you have to do is say, hey, I'm going to send output to the circuit. You see Ableton is saying I'm sending output to it, but the output that I'm going to send to it is syncing information, MIDI code. Okay, so I turned it on. So when I hit play, Ableton sends MIDI code to it and it turns it on. MIDI clock, not MIDI code, by the way, MIDI clock to it, and it syncs it up. Okay, once that's done, we're good. Now I created MIDI track here, and we can see that on the first part it says MIDI from all ins. It means everything that's connected to it will send MIDI information into the input. Now the output of whatever I play on this clip, which were these notes right here, I want to send it to what device? The microbrute. And internally on this microbrute, I programmed it so the MIDI channel on it is MIDI channel 15, because MIDI is 16 channels per cable or port. Okay, I programmed this keyboard with its software that it comes with it, so it could recognize MIDI channel 15 from anybody that's connected to it. So here I send information to the microbrute and it's MIDI channel 15 I selected. So when I hit play on this clip, let me lower everybody else so we only hear this machine. When I hit play on that clip, these notes will be sent to that and we'll be able to hear that. So that's how you set up MIDI to external synthesizers in a drum machine as well. Okay, and I'll leave you guys with something pretty cool that you guys can use if you can't play, for example, you're not that good at playing chords and stuff like that. You can use some of the MIDI plugins that come with MIDI effects plugins that come with Ableton that are really cool to use. Okay, and I'll show you guys what I mean. I'm going to just play this drum machine. And I'm gonna just lower this guy for a minute and I want to show you guys something here. Once you play notes, you can shorten these notes. See this? Let's get weird. So that's pretty much, let's say if we want to play some weird chords, okay, which are probably not going to sound so cool with this just bass line. We might get rid of that bass line, but let's go to a MIDI track here and let's select one of the instruments from Ableton. Let's see what analog has. It maybe has like maybe a piano or something. Let's see what kind of sounds it has. I guess we'll use that one. Okay. And we'll put this on notes here. So let's play single notes, okay? I want to be able to play chords with that, and I only played C and D on that bass, so I know that it's in the key of C. Okay, so I'm just going to go to MIDI effects here, and I'm going to grab a chord generator. Okay, and I'm going to drop it right in front of that synthesizer. You can only put it in front. MIDI effects always go in front of instruments. Okay, and why don't we create a minor chord from that one? We can use one of the presets here, and I'll use a minor chord. Okay, a minor chord is a flattened third and a fifth. So now we have chords here in the minor chords. Okay, that bass line might be weird because that bass line is kind of like techno-ish. But you guys can see how quickly I can play any chord, any minor chord, C, D, or whatever. It doesn't matter. And let's lower this bass. how that bass sounds with it. Let's bring that vocal in to see if we get an idea for some chords. I hit the capture button up here just because I didn't want to go into record, just for the quick example. You see everything I played, it captured it. I'm just going to listen to the last one to see if anything good came out of that, and we'll just grab it for this example. That's fine, I can live with that for this example, and we'll just crop that. And there we have the notes, and let's quantize it by highlighting them all and quantizing them. And let's add a little velocity change here at the bottom. Oops, I added an extra note that I don't need. So these are notes, right, that are playing chords. If I solo them, you guys will hear that. So we were to record chords by using that MIDI effect. Okay, so we grabbed it from, we created a MIDI track, we added a instrument to it, and then in front of it we added the MIDI chord effect, and we decided to play minor chords. Okay, now if we wanted to edit that further, we only see notes, we can't actually see the chords. How the hell are we going to edit the chords, right? So this is where it gets a little bit tricky, right? We're going to create another MIDI track, right? And on that MIDI track we are going to send the information on this one into this track. And when it says, who are you going to receive MIDI from? You're going to say, I want to receive MIDI from the name of that track, Soft Morning. Okay, you see it on there. And it's going to record this through the MIDI, through the chord MIDI effect into this track. So here we go. We're going to put this on record, and let's do it. There you have it. Now we can actually see the chord, and what is that good for? We can make the chords a little bit more fancy. We can move notes around. Maybe this chord won't play that chord and it'll play another chord. You know, this is the fun stuff where you can actually mess things up. And that actually wasn't bad. Let's bring that one back down here. Let's see. Cool, now we can add a different sound to this track right here, and so forth. You can do anything you want at this point. Okay, so basically that's it. Let's do a review of that last one we just did. And that's a little too loud. Let's bring it up an octave. Down an octave. This is a different sound. Saturator. Let's make it really weird. So let's review that. Now, all we basically did was create a track. We created an instrument on it, and we didn't know how to play chords, and we wanted to play minor chords. And we decided, since we don't know how to play minor chords, let's use a MIDI effect here. And let's open up the chord device and let's choose the preset minor chord. We dragged it in front of the synthesizer here. And you can see that a minor chord is made up of the first, the third, and the fifth, a flattened third. So if you don't know it, you don't even have to know what this is about, to be honest. You can just play a minor chord. So what did that allow me to do? To hit just any note, and it would play a minor C chord, minor D, E, or F. Okay. But knowing a little music theory is actually very helpful. I would definitely encourage you to learn a little music theory. It would help you a lot because you can do some really cool stuff like sevenths and things like that. Okay, so once we played those notes, we took a look at them here and we saw that it was just single notes. If we wanted to make it more interesting, it would be hard for us to edit those chords. So we wanted to record them into another track. So we basically wanted to record this MIDI effect, the chord, into another track so we can actually see the chords that we played and we can edit them further. We created a new MIDI track here, and then we selected MIDI from this track, as you guys can see here. Okay, we selected an empty clip, we hit record, and it recorded them for us, and those are the chords. And then it allowed us to move those chords around any which way we want, get rid of them if we wanted to, or maybe make them a seventh by adding a seventh, and so forth. Okay, and then on this track we can use a different synthesizer, okay, if we wanted to. Or we can also use a different MIDI effect like an arpeggiator, so it would arpeggiate those notes, okay, as well. A different sound would be more interesting than the one that he has, but it's all up to taste. You know, you can sit there and just on your own time figure out, you know, what would be a good sound for an arpeggiator sound. It's real cheesy. So that's pretty much some basic MIDI routing for you. A little bit advanced in some areas, but pretty basic. How to route MIDI into Ableton, to record MIDI into Ableton, and with external synthesizers, and how to use some of the MIDI effects in Ableton, sort of like the chord generator and the arpeggiator, to create music when you particularly may not know how to play piano. I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast for today. It's very short. But again, we got to get rid of that word, but we'll work on it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, my name is Josie Carr. Thank you for stopping by Planet1wp. Ciao.